Welcome to Vermont Artists and Authors, where we interview great storytellers and artists from the amazing Green Mountain State. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're honored to have with us the nationally celebrated and famed Vermont author and literary consultant and founder of the Writers Center of White River Junction, Joni B. Cole.
I think you have the wrong guest on, Barney. That international part, I'm not so sure about. I'll take it. I'll take it.
It's true, though. It's true. Yeah,
It
see?
is
Yeah.
true. I once
Yeah,
taught
see?
somebody who lived in France. I taught them creative writing, so that counts.
See? I see, I'm telling you, yeah.
There you
I
go.
mean, so
Yeah.
you've been around. You've been writing books. You've been writing books for a while. You have 7 books out as of this recording, and you just had your latest book came out as of this recording about uh, uh a month or so ago. Correct? The
Yes, a month ago
Party
in
Like Us
September.
20. Yes. Okay. See. All right. Party Like Us 2044, and this is not one of the books that you've written that actually is more of a a writing handbook for writers. This is actually one of your books of essays, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's a collection of personal essays.
Right.
So.
So talk to us a bit about this. How did you have time to get this book together with everything else that you do as well?
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, that's a big black hole, Barney. I have no idea. But I know one thing, I'm kind of tired. So, but well, a part of it came together during COVID when what else do you do? And I really was like a house on fire. I just honed in on particularly my own writing, which had taken a bit of a back seat because I teach so
Hmm.
much. And that said, I continued to teach and during that period, and the teaching fed the writing. And also there's nothing like a deadline. And I had a contract. So, you kind of have to focus and write. But in some ways, the writing beget the writing. When you really are in that habit of writing, I feel like, or at least speaking personally, I'm more creative. Ideas come. I'm always writing, even when I'm not in front of the computer. So it wasn't easy, but I did feel like I was in a real creative phase when I wrote this book.
Like the theme of this, some of it's humorous essays, some of it has a more of a serious tone. How did you were able
Yeah.
to arrange the stories and the essays in a certain order?
Yeah. Well, the book is weird as a collection of essays because, first of all, some are traditional essays and are written in that way. And clearly, I'm the narrator, and they're about experiences I've had in life. But there's a strong handful of them that are really one off weirdo essays. Like one is a letter from me to the man that was the inspiration for Dracula, Vlad the Impaler. And one is a exaggeration of me when I had the job of a program director at a boutique literary festival. So while it starts out sort of like me, this character, this performative eye goes off the deep end. Another one is a screenplay, a short screenplay about a very traumatic event that happened that I thought a screenplay format would serve. That format would serve. And then some are flat out humor essays. And so thematically, I thought it was all over the place, which could have made it a very difficult book to sell because most collections, there's some undercurrent. It's about grieving or motherhood or aging or something. And mine, my pieces were all over the place. And I did not have a theme that asserted itself until the end. And when I saw what that was, I slightly arranged the pieces a little differently so that that theme came through, perhaps. But I also see each of these essays as just, they've got to work standing
Right.
alone. And you don't have to read them in order, and you don't have to read this collectively. And it depends on what mood you are, which one you pick, back, front, whatever. So the reviewers, particularly the early editorial reviewers, talked about it's the voice that holds them all together, the sense of humor, the style of writing, the quality of the writing. So if there's a real unity in the book, it is through my voice, my
Right.
perspective.
And then also about the splotch on that when you talk about the 4 mile tour.
Yeah. Yeah. That essay was born of desperation because, like I said, I was under contract, and And so there's really no room for downtime. And part of that downtime isn't in the writing process. It's in finding a piece I want to write. What's my next idea and my next idea? And so in a I tend to go jogging a couple of times, 4 or 5 times a week. And I often do the same 4 mile run. And that is a really good resource for creative flow when you're moving or jogging, especially when you jog slowly like I do. It allows for creative inspiration. But I was like, I gotta think of my next essay. And so I thought, well, I'll write about this 4 mile run. And and at first it seemed like that's about as lame as you can get. But it has a really important theme to me that I had to tease out for myself. But it stops at different landmarks on the run, and it's treated and written almost as if it's one of those tourist brochures, 10 things you must see when you go to Italy or when you go to, Naples or when you go here. But I said, 8 things or whatever you must see on Joni's 4 mile run. But it had a theme that emerged, which was related to how much, though, even when we are just doing something that's very ordinary or something repetitive that we do a lot, how much goes through our head, how much we're affected by the drama and the trauma of everyday events, how much we think about, one of the first stops on that tour, if you will, is the elementary school where my kids went to school and when they were younger. And every time I run by, and a kid starts laughing or screaming on the playground, I have this jolt, about, is there something bad going on? We're so programmed for violence. And then other spots on the run, evoke other things. And so like, and some are lighter, some are heavier, but I think my most harsh critic said it worked. So I'll assume that essay worked.
And so who's the audience for this book then?
Yeah, well, I think that it is the readers who really like smart essays that are pretty edgy and that have humor. So, I mean, I'm not sure I would say this, but it has been compared, or the audience have been compared to the audience of fans of David Sedaris, for example. So writing about family experiences, right, and then the humor and the writing kind of accumulate into a story that suddenly packs a punch. So, certainly there is an overlap there. But yeah, and I was surprised because I thought this was really naive of me, but more women would gravitate towards this book. And I swear on Amazon and more of the emails that I get, they're at least 50% men. And offer enough feedback and substance that I know they're really reading it and really do value the book. So I don't know, you never know. I think it's a good lesson for writers. Don't narrow your audience necessarily. So who knows? It's for anybody who wants a good book and make me happy by reading it.
So let me ask you this, because this is the 7th book you've published. Was this a book that you've been kind of thinking about for a while, or is this something that you're happy you wrote 6 books before you wrote this one?
Yeah. This is my second essay collection. And, I think that each book helped pave the way for the next way. And to write something that's solely from your heart, and to write trusting I can make something out of my 4 mile run. I can make something out of these, externally anyway, little stories, takes a bit of confidence. And so the other books certainly help boost that confidence. When the first 3 were a part of a big project almost. So that felt like a good way to sort of start. And then I have 2 books for writers, and that's just a subject, teaching creative writing. The creative process is a huge area of interest for me. And then I had written another collection of essays, and now this one. So the evolution of my writing life felt like this. It was time to do this. I really wanted my own voice, and I really wanted to explore some of my own stories too. So, and my own humor, and stretch myself. So I was grateful for that contract and for the space and time to write this. And now I'm working on another collection, so I can kind of reinforce more stories and things like that. So we'll see.
So for those that might not understand it, that passively read and not maybe full on readers, Explain the difference between an essay and a short story.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Well, for me, one of the distinctions is that a short story I think of as a fictional work, and
Hmm.
an essay, uh, a personal essay, because there's all sorts of different essays. There's op-ed essays, there's thought pieces, um, but a personal essay like mine is based on a real experience, and you're sharing that experience in a way that uses many of the same fictional techniques that a short story does. It's scenic. You want to immerse the reader in that experience using, scenic techniques, the same as a piece of fiction will do, but it's not made up. But that said, in personal narratives, sometimes you conflate time. There's a saying, truth over facts. You don't pull a James Fry and just make stuff up out of, whole cloth, but you might leave a character out of a scene because they weren't relevant to that you're trying to get at, but there's big no-nos. You don't exaggerate, you don't make up. But the weird thing about my collection is, and it is the same with David Sedaris's pieces often, you'll find a good healthy handful of those where clearly it is exaggerated. Clearly it is a character that's being made up. The thing that though I feel still allows for it to be in a collection of essays is a generous publisher who says, okay, you can put those in there, but b that underneath that story, if you will, that fictionalized account is still your truth.
Hmm.
So that I think is a different point, a strong different point in a short story and an essay. So
Right. Because there's over 30 chapters in this. So there's over 30 essays in this.
I think
How
so,
did
yeah.
you Yeah, how did you arrange them? How did you arrange the chapters?
Yeah, that's a fun exercise near the end of the whole process,
Right.
and um one way is related to what we were just talking about. Like I said, there's a strong handful of essays that are just weirdo. One to, me writing to Vlad the Impaler, or, the one in the form of a screenplay. So some of it was mathematical. I didn't want to front load those, or just clump them. And so I dispersed those essays um, throughout in kind of a mathematical way. There's one also that's all just Amazon reviews that I
I
envisioned
know.
for this book that was coming out. So, and it's called The Real Reason Writers Hate Amazon. And so I just mathematically dispersed them. And then, the tone of some, seemed to work better. That said, I don't think people read a collection like this necessarily in order, but I still wanted to make sure that when you turn the page, there was a totally fresh approach in the next one. So who knows if I did? I did pay more attention to the first and the last essay because I don't know, Barney, is that how you read it? For me, a
Yeah.
collection, I'll read the last one first, or or if I'm browsing, then it will be the first one, and so there was a method to my madness in positioning, particularly the first and the last essay. The last essay to me feels really hopeful in a weird
Hmm.
way. And so why not end with that? And the first essay kind of set the stage of a lot of characters I kept referencing, my partner. And so I made that the first one. So I don't know. I,
Cool.
I hope it worked. It didn't not work. We'll put it that
Right.
way.
Another question I was thinking about this is that you also, as we say, you also writers handbooks, and so you're like a writer's writer. How much do you feel like you're under the microscope when you actually write other prose books to wonder what other people who've read your writing handbooks will think?
Oh my god. If I think about that too much, I freak out. And it amazes me. One of my best achievements, I think, is that I can kind of bury that huge worry while I'm writing. Because if I thought of that, in
Right.
a good sense, it also makes me never want to cut corners. I don't think I would anyway. I'm just that kind of writer. It's like, unless like every verb has to be right, I want to end every paragraph the right way. And of course, I do a billion revisions. So maybe I have that in me anyway. But certainly, if I'm going to go out and say, now I'm telling you how to write and do creative writing, I feel like there is a bar that I need to um, ascend to. And that feedback that I've gotten from Party Like It's 2044, I'm thrilled when people do recognize that because the book is very accessible, I think, and my style can be very conversational, but a lot of people see the brushstrokes that I hit, to achieve that conversational style. And so I'm like, yeah, score, So yeah, there is a bit of pressure, and I hope, thankfully, can kind of just put it aside
Right.
sometimes.
Me-
Sometimes.
Mention those brushstrokes again. Like, what are some of those writing techniques that you've been very good at, talking to being a consultant and being a trainer? What are some of those techniques that you're proud
Yeah.
that they've noticed?
Yeah. Well, in an essay, in a traditional personal essay, there's a form that often works. It's not formulaic, but it is a form that adheres to how readers come into a story and why readers will give a crap about a story. And that form is show, tell, reflect, meaning open with a
Okay.
scene. Don't open with a bunch of description or you telling the reader who you are, and they'll be like, I don't care. So you need to open with a gripping scene. It doesn't have to be bells and whistles, but just immerse them immediately in some moment that has a vibration. And that's the showing moment. And then the tell is, well, now what's the information? I've been living in this house for 20 years, or, we'd recently gotten divorced or whatever. So there's plenty of telling, particularly that's another difference between perhaps a short story and an essay, is the ratio of showing and telling is different in an essay. It allows for a little bit more telling. And then reflect is, so what about what this is about? So it's a very reductive formula, that show, tell, reflect, because usually it's show, tell, show, tell, show, tell. And my essays are very scenic, almost like short stories. But in the end, there has to be some articulation of earned by the essay about how you're different, how your mental landscape as the narrator of this story is a little bit different. What have you learned or realized or rearticulated? And so that form really helps, but you don't want it to look formulaic. So you want to kind of hide that. Often you want to open in scene and close in scene. That's always the way to have a strongest piece, but you don't want it to look again like I'm following essay writing 101, you know, even the last words of sentences and paragraphs, and certainly of the essay itself, they matter. Making sure there's no cliches or whatever. So it's sizing each scene right, or sizing the expository passages right. So it's not suddenly like, where'd the story go? So there's
Right.
just so much craft to it. But the beautiful thing is you can teach craft. And if you know craft, you still need to rewrite a billion times, but you can rewrite forward. You know, like, oh, I know why I'm bored, because I didn't open in scene. I know why this ending just dribbles away, because the epiphany already happened and now no one's going to care anymore now, about the next 15 scenes after that. So when you have an understanding of a craft, you can rewrite your way forward. And about 40,000 drafts later, in my case, I get where I want to go. So, but yeah. And, the whole part of that, the whole goal is to make it not sound writerly. That, at least for me,
Right.
that's a pet peeve. When I'm reading a book and someone can write beautifully, I'm like, you are so showing off here, and so I lose the story. I lose the immersive quality of good writing. And so you want to write beautifully, but you don't want that to be the first thing the reader notices. You want it to be this lovely after effect that doesn't get in the way of the story. So,
Right.
you know, who knows if I achieved that, but I certainly worked hard at it. And some of the feedback suggests that I did. And it matters to me to write well too. It matters a
Right.
lot. So, yeah.
Because as you say, it's almost like the book, Party Like It's 2044 is almost like a variety show, in the sense that there's so many different stories to it. Was there
Yeah.
was there one story that you just was the easiest for you to write? Like, I have no revisions, like the least amount of revisions, because you just
Yeah.
nailed it right away.
Um, there's one that's really short and really straightforward. And um, it's called Dear Ex Friend. And it's just a letter to a friend that became an ex-friend because of the times we live in. Politics sort of cleaved us, but she had been a really good friend. And then we accidentally met in a parking lot, and before, just crossing a parking lot, and before I could remember, oh wait, I'm mad at you, oh wait, you're on the other side, we kind of reunited, had a hug. And it's a really short piece, but it's about me reflecting on that, actually in sort of a form of a letter to her, saying, well, now what are we? Are we ex friends? And while I realized that we were still not at all back even close to where we were, it was a glimmer. And it was a glimmer of hope that maybe all the relationships that have been cleaved, over the political landscape and for some other reasons as well, when you can set that aside, you can maybe come together on some common ground. And it was a deeply personal essay because I have trouble setting that aside. But it ambushed me. I just ran into her and, oh, I love this woman. And I'm like, wait a minute, no, I don't. And so that one came together pretty quickly. But rarely do I know what is the point of writing this story until I've really delved into it on the page. And often even I'm well into the revision process and how it'll read well, but I still don't
Mm.
know, what am I trying to say here to give it heft, to make it work. And in the revision stage, sometimes even late revision, I will finally figure it out. And then it's like, oh, thank goodness. And then there's some massaging and whatever. But I often don't. All I know is this story has some kind of heartbeat and there's something there. And so I need to tease it out for myself. And then if it never does get teased out, it's not an essay. It's not in the book. It's not. Um, so it's a discovery process, which is both a glorious thing and the most nerve-wracking thing because you spend so much time on it. And what if there's nothing there? It was just a sort of mildly entertaining story. So,
Was there any of these essays that kind of created some story seeds for you? Like, I want to explore this more, but in like a larger format.
I don't think I've got that novelist or that memoir muscle. And
Right.
I don't have ADD, but I do really like the short form in taking these moments, if you will, or experiences that might seem kind of small externally, and recognizing there was something there and teasing it out. And so similar maybe to the fact that the book doesn't have one big honking theme throughout. I don't have one narrative necessarily that is calling to me that says, Joni, write a memoir. I
Right.
don't have a phase in my life that thinks, oh, that's where I really had a growth spurt or, was challenged and overcame, the stuff that kind of motivates a beautiful memoir. And maybe I just live in fits and spurts, but so I read memoir. I love novels, but I don't at all have a calling at this point to write a longer piece.
Right.
So who
And so
knows?
the title, what's the origin story of the title of the book?
Oh, it's terrible. It's morbid. It's awful. I won't give too much away, but the essay setting it's about my birthday month because I do celebrate my birthday over a whole month and I make a big deal out of it and I encourage gifts and attention. And yet, it's interesting because in our culture, you know, birthdays are often vilified. And then of course as you're aging, then it's all about, well, you know, you're not dead yet, you're lucky, so it's interesting. It's a reflection, it's a story about me on my birthday or the birthday month, but it's an interesting reflection, I think, on this culture we live in where when someone dies, we go to the celebration of their life. But when they're still alive, all we're doing is counting off the days or years
Right.
before they're dead. And that's always bothered me because, first of all, it's a downer because I love my birthday. And then all these cards from dear people that I love talking about, well, you're another year older and closer to death, So that title, The Party Like It's 2044, is obviously the title of that essay. And it alludes to, I don't even want to say, but for my birthday recently, not only did one of my friends send me a card that was just a total downer, but he did my actuarial table, that insurance companies do, to predict how long they're going to have to insure you. And he thought I would love this. I'm like, what the hell? It was awful how many more years I've got, oh my God, it was awful, but it made for a good essay and it helped to bring forth that theme about
Right.
our culture and aging and birthdays and celebrating death, but not celebrating life, even when we're
Right.
still alive. So,
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Huh.
Don't give someone an actuarial table for their birthday. I hope you never get one, Barney. It's not really a pleasant thing to read.
Well, it's almost, but I would see it as like a challenge. Like, all right, then I'm gonna beat this. See, that's what I'd look at it.
Well, I luckily it's where I put the pressure, as a writer to have a good book because I teach writing. I did also put in that same vault that stupid actuarial table he sent me, right? Because I didn't want it to bug me because it does kind of bug you, There's a
Right.
date hanging over. But I saw this guy, Ed, recently, and somehow this came up and he said, "Oh, don't worry, it's changed now. You actually have more months," because I forget what other factors went in. So fortunately, it can shift depending on certain things, so that made me
Right.
feel a little bit better, but
Right.
who knows? I don't
Oh,
know.
that's
Anyway, either way, the clock is ticking. I gotta write a lot more books quickly because I don't know.
right.
With friends like
So
those.
right. See. So Joni, if people want to learn more about your work and learn more about what you do, where's the best place they could go to?
Well, my author website is my name, jonibcole.com. And I have a bunch of events listed that I'm doing around Vermont and or webinars or other online things. And then my Writers Center has its own website, which is thewriterscenterwrj.com. But they both
Okay.
cross-pollinate. So
All
but
right.
yeah, the author website's probably the best one. So
Right.
yeah.
Perfect. Well, listen, Joni, you're gonna have to come back on when your next book comes out because this has been a gem of a discussion. I've had a great
Uh,
time.
it's been fun for me, but I wanted you to tell me one of your dad jokes.
What do you call the ability to move seabirds with your mind? Pelicanesis.
God.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joni.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Barney. I'm glad I got to meet you. Now our paths will probably cross a lot as
I see
fellow writers,
exactly.
Vermonters. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.